Late spring in Pennsylvania can often be unpredictable. April this year was exceptionally rainy and warm. I usually need to mow the lawn for the first time between early and mid-May, but this year was different. At least it is not snowing. Last year around this time, we experienced a snowstorm that dumped 6 inches of snow. I suppose having to mow the lawn early is a small price to pay for avoiding snow. With tax season behind me, it was wonderful to spend time outside enjoying the sunshine. My house has a unique characteristic. The backyard slopes steeply downward toward a small creek surrounded by woods at the back of the property. When the house was constructed, the front was leveled off to meet the road by using backfill. This created a sharp incline about halfway down the side of the house. As a result, the basement, which is completely enclosed in the front, is open in the rear. This design allowed me to install a bifold service door, making it easy to move the lawnmower and other gardening tools inside instead of cluttering the garage. I consider this one of the best features of my home. I had just finished mowing, and everything seemed perfectly in order. Since I am allergic to grass, I was eager to go upstairs to take a shower. As I was about to reach the stairs, I suddenly heard my wife's voice. I had noticed her friend's car parked outside while I was mowing in front of the house, so hearing voices was not unusual. However, when I listened carefully to what was being said, my hand froze on the doorknob. I guess I should begin by introducing myself. My name is James. James Crane prefers to be called Jim, but during high school, his classmates began referring to him as Morgan after the actor James Crane, who starred in Hogan's Heroes. He did not mind the nickname, although the show had been canceled before he was born and is no longer widely recognized in popular culture. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in accounting, still carrying the last name Morgan. Shortly after graduation, he earned his CPA certification in a short period. Currently, he works as a team leader at a large firm in Philadelphia, handling audits and related tasks. While the job may not be thrilling, it is well compensated, and he has gained insight into the inner operations of many companies. James possesses a remarkable talent for forensic analysis, specializing in tracing financial transactions to uncover fraud and money laundering. His expertise is becoming more acknowledged, and he has even been invited to provide advice to the FBI on 2 occasions. His wife, Emily, double majored in political science and business. She intended to pursue a law degree when they first met during their freshman year. James was waiting for the first class when Emily entered. She had a tall, slender build reminiscent of a ballerina but with slightly fuller curves. Her lengthy strawberry blonde hair fell loosely over her bare shoulders, creating a stunning sight. She wore a lovely sundress and sandals highlighting her smooth, graceful legs. The combination of innocence and allure overwhelmed James, and he was suddenly overcome with desire. Unfortunately, Emily was not sitting beside me, nor was she assigned to my group for the project. It took me almost a month to finally approach her and break the ice. I cracked a silly joke, and to my surprise, she laughed. It was not a shy chuckle, but a genuine, hearty laugh. We began chatting, and I asked if she wanted to get coffee after class. She smiled and said, "I have been waiting for you to ask for 4 weeks." During the last 2 years of college, we hardly spent any time apart. Our parents were not thrilled. But when we moved in together for our senior year, they quickly saw how serious we were and accepted it. I thought things could not improve, but then everything changed. After graduation, I immediately secured a position at one of the largest accounting firms in Philadelphia. For a newly graduated 22-year-old, I was earning an impressive salary. Emily was accepted into the University of Pennsylvania Law School, and we continued living in our student apartment. My company offered to sponsor my MBA, so I enrolled in classes as well. I took the train to work daily, so I did not need a car and managed to keep expenses low. 3 years later, Emily finished law school, and during a dinner celebrating her graduation at Morton Steakhouse in Rittenhouse Square, I proposed to her. 6 months afterward, we got married. Emily began working as a deputy district attorney at the Bucks County Prosecutor's Office, which is located north of Philadelphia. We decided to purchase a house in Doylestown since it was the county seat and home to the courthouse where she worked. The regional atmosphere was perfect for us as we started this new chapter together. The railroad line ended there, which meant I could catch the train to work every day. The commute was about 80 minutes one way, but it was still preferable to driving on the notorious Shill Expressway, also known as the Schuylkill Expressway or Interstate 95. Emily and her mother found a charming starter home with 3 bedrooms. One of the bedrooms was arranged as an office with 2 desks, since I sometimes worked remotely and Emily needed her own space for legal tasks. Another bedroom was designated as a guest room, and naturally, the last room was the master bedroom. The house was also conveniently near her parents' place. Emily convinced me that having her mother nearby would be like having a built-in nanny when we eventually had children. I was an only child and had always longed for siblings. Back in our freshman year, Emily and I had talked about having kids, deciding to wait until she was more established in her career before trying to start a family. Now that time had come, and 2 nights ago we agreed to stop using her birth control and begin trying for a baby. I had never felt happier. Then I heard Emily say with joyful certainty, "Morgan and I have decided that it is time for me to get pregnant." Her friend Olivia Watkins shared the excitement, both women making the same high-pitched noise that reminded me of whales, stranded on the Jersey Shore. From my place on the stairs, I smiled warmly at their enthusiasm, which perfectly matched my own as I looked forward to becoming a father. With that, I reached for the pen. Once again, I encountered a question that erased the grin from my face and drained the joy from within me. "That is wonderful," Emily said. "But what do you plan to do about Paul?" "Paul, shh." Emily pulled her friend close. Morgan was outside, trimming the grass. A brief silence followed, and I noticed her scanning the surroundings as if waiting for me to show up. Then she spoke again. "I already told Paul I am ending the affair. He accepted it since he is stepping down from his Senate position. Paul believes he has a genuine chance. Getting caught in a scandal involving a married staff member would be disastrous." Those simple words shattered my world. Paul Evans was Emily's superior at the district attorney's office. He was a widower in his early 40s. His wife had passed away from breast cancer, leaving him a single parent to their daughter Barbara. Paul was a true political strategist, and Emily loved sharing stories about his political maneuvers within his party aiming for higher office. "I suppose I just realized how my wife had access to all this behind-the-scenes information," Olivia said. "Really, cold turkey? You have been passionate for 6 months, and now you're just going to quit a stud muffin?" The teasing uncertainty in her tone made me want to explode. She was a former classmate from Penn, someone I knew before Emily. I understood Emily and Olivia were very close friends, but I always thought she was also my friend. Apparently, I was mistaken. "Stop it," Emily protested, laughing. "You are terrible. Paul is an amazing lover, but it was just impolite to—" I wanted to play along with him. I cared deeply for Morgan, but James simply took me and used me however he pleased. There was no affection involved, just raw passion and control. Now that Jim and I are expecting a child, I refuse to take any risks. My love for Morgan is real, and I am determined to be a devoted and faithful mother. How many more cliches are we going to create? I wondered. All that remains is to return home, spot an unfamiliar vehicle in the driveway, find them making love in my bed, and then everything would finally be complete. I longed to rush into the room and scream. I wanted to destroy everything, but my body was frozen by shock. I was so stunned I couldn't move. My heart pounded loudly in my ears. Then Olivia suddenly asked Emily, who giggled softly. "Well, not exactly," she confessed. "I have a business meeting with James in Pittsburgh next week, and we'll share our final intimate moments there. I'll miss the passion, but Morgan and the baby mean more to me." I could no longer bear it, though I didn't know what to do. I love Emily, yet it was tearing me apart. At that moment, I started digging into the business affairs. I knew I needed to take a step back and carefully plan my next moves. I began climbing the stairs steadily, as if ascending a ladder. Then I opened the door and entered the kitchen. Emily and Olivia were sitting there drinking tea. Was that a flicker of guilt on Emily's face? "Sweetheart, are you all right?" she asked in a worried tone. I realized tears were streaming down my cheeks. "Allergies," I murmured. "It's going to be a rough spring." Then I went upstairs to rest. "Just leave your clothes in the bathroom after your shower and I will wash them immediately so they do not spread to your wardrobe. I bought you a fresh pack of Claire and D last week. It is in the medicine cabinet," I said. Thanking me, she nodded. As I headed towards the stairs, I realized I needed space to clear my thoughts. The following morning was Monday, and I used the cover of an early meeting to leave the house before Emily woke up. The previous evening, I had claimed allergies as a reason to turn in early because my feelings were overwhelming. Sitting on the train, my mind kept replaying what I had learned. On one side, my wife had been unfaithful. but it was purely physical. Some might argue I should accept this and be relieved she returned to our marriage, ready to be a devoted wife and mother. Yet, another voice in my head warned me that if she betrayed me once, what guarantees were there that she would not do it again? Perhaps a decade from now, when the children were at school, another purely physical affair could occur. Then came thoughts of divorce with children involved. Emily would probably gain custody while I would be left with substantial alimony and child support obligations. As an accountant and business analyst, I had to assess this as a matter of risk versus reward. What stood out was that my trust in her was utterly broken. The idea that it was just sex missed the crucial point. The real issue was the total disrespect for the partner in these situations. The person cheating is fully aware that they are doing something wrong and causing pain to the other individual. Otherwise, they would behave openly, and I would have known about it from the start. Do not misunderstand me. I doubt I would have accepted her being involved with Dawn, but at least if she had been honest with me, some level of respect would have been maintained. Emily's behavior showed me clearly just how little regard she has for me. I spent the entire day working, yet part of my mind was preoccupied with what I needed to address. I had no solid evidence except for a conversation I happened to overhear. I had noticed no changes in the past 6 months during which the affair was going on. Confronting her directly without proof would have been very risky with slim chances of a positive outcome. Emily would deny everything, as would Paul Evans. Pursuing legal action would be financial ruin, since every judge, politician, and attorney in the neighboring counties was familiar with Evans. I would be crushed under pressure to protect his reputation. I considered simply walking away and building a new life elsewhere. That was tempting, yet the house felt like a burden I could not discard. Emily's income alone could not cover it, and we barely had any equity. She would be forced to sell almost immediately to prevent foreclosure, which was unlikely given the weak market conditions. This situation would have wrecked both our credit records. As a certified public accountant with a poor credit history, finding a new job would be a poor choice because how could anyone trust you with their finances? Spending money when you clearly do not know how to manage your own finances bothered me. I needed concrete evidence before I could take any action. Eventually, I found it, but it came from the most unexpected place. 3 days later, I held on to hope, yet I still had not uncovered any proof to confirm the rumors I had heard. Her personal laptop showed nothing suspicious. No hidden email accounts, no secret purchases hidden away, no receipts from unauthorized locations, absolutely nothing. Then, Emily called me at work and said we were invited to a political announcement party at Paul Evans's residence on Friday night. I assumed this event was centered around his prominent declaration to run for a seat in the United States Senate. Thoughts of a major announcement crossed my mind, but I was still without any real evidence. We arrived just in time for the gathering. Evans owned an impressive mansion near Washington Crossing with a modest horse farm. A large tent was pitched in the backyard for the guests. As we entered, standing at the front of the welcoming line with a commanding presence was Paul Evans himself. Being a widower, Evans did not have a wife to fulfill the hostess role. However, he had apparently asked his 21-year-old daughter to take on that responsibility. She stood beside her father, greeting the attendees with natural ease as though it was her lifelong role. When it was our turn, Evans gave a wide smile directed at Emily and said, "Emily, you did it! How wonderful!" He gave my wife a polite kiss on the cheek, then turned to me, James, and added, "It is good to see you again. I would be lost without your wife, but I realize I will. You will have to let her go soon when you begin to grow your family." He chuckled at his own joke. "Just let me have her once you are finished with her and there will be no hard feelings." Laughter followed again. Emily even blushed slightly, and I felt tempted to finish off the SMI goon. I understood his hint, which he clearly believed had slipped past me. "Who can say what the future holds?" I replied in a calm, neutral voice, not unfriendly but not warm. Either it was the same tone I had used when reporting the audit findings, Evans reddened a bit, and Emily nudged me quietly, complaining about rudeness. Evans smoothly moved on to greet another visitor, leaving us with his daughter. Emily was remarkably striking, but Barbara Evans was truly breathtaking. Despite my inner irritation, I couldn't help but notice her deep red hair and radiant smile, which reminded me of a young Morgan Hera. If Emily resembled a tall, graceful ballerina, Barbara seemed like she belonged in a pin-up swimsuit calendar beside Kate Upton, She possessed that rare mix of stunning appearance, robust health, beautiful hair, and flawless skin that photographers dream of and often have to digitally alter to create. Paul had the ideal triple threat political family. He appeared to be the perfect wise leader and devoted family man. Losing his wife to cancer gave him the perfect spouse. She was revered, and anyone daring to attack her risked their career. Barbara was a princess, a prom queen, and a Penn State graduate with a major in James, who once was a gymnast and is now part of the Penn State cheerleading team, mentioned a rumor from Emily. It was said that Barbara intended to try out for the Eagles cheerleading squad during the upcoming open audition, especially since she had just celebrated her 21st birthday. With a late husband and a clever, beautiful, photogenic daughter, the press would surely adore her on the campaign trail, James said. Barbara greeted me with enthusiasm, holding me close in an embrace that was far from a casual hug at a social event. It was a full-bodied hug, her entire figure pressing against me with genuine delight. "You look fantastic. No wonder Emily has been hiding you. You never come to any of our gatherings. You really should not be working so hard. It is unhealthy," she said all at once. In less than a moment, my feelings changed from anger to utter surprise. I complimented her on her appearance and prepared to leave when I suddenly realized something. First, Barbara had not even said hello to Emily, and second, what kind of parties was Emily referring to? Before I could ask, Emily hurried over to welcome the young woman. With no opportunity to linger, James and Emily moved aside to let others join the conversation. As we mingled, I wondered what was really happening. After buying my wife a drink, I questioned her about those so-called parties Barbara had mentioned. Emily simply smiled and gave a disdainful snort. She was merely joking about that little trickster. Paul occasionally holds team talks and strategic meetings in this very bar. He claims that having a drink in hand helps him think better, and at the bar, you never can tell what might happen next. Who could possibly be next in the booth? She has been home several times when we crossed paths. Don't tell anyone. But Paul allowed her to have drinks at his place before she turned 21. I eventually uncovered the truth. The scoundrel had an affair with my wife right under his own roof, supposedly during team meetings. Perhaps those gatherings were real, with Emily being the last to leave, or maybe she left first and then returned after the others had gone. This prevented the legal team from speculating why Emily always lingered to assist the boss in managing the chaos following the loss of his wife and daughter who were away at college. There was no need for a hidden hotel room, which is why no record of their meeting exists. "So Barbara attends your team meetings?" I asked. Emily dismissed the inquiry, saying no, she had been home a few times when classes were canceled and she was just teasing her father about hosting parties during working hours. She grasped my arm, saying, "Come on, darling, let's go treat your fiancé." Emily did not move away from me. We talked to several of her colleagues, and some mentioned our plans to start a family. They expressed how sorry they would be to see Emily away for a while, but how delighted they were for both of us. I felt somewhat uneasy, wondering how so many people knew about our intentions. An hour later, Paul Evans gathered everyone's attention. His daughter stood by his side, smiling warmly. He began by expressing gratitude to all for attending, and then proceeded to reveal his major campaign. Everyone had anticipated the news, yet remained eager and enthusiastic. I saw the publisher of the local newspaper, along with one of his journalists, jotting down notes. I am certain that tomorrow's edition will be filled with stories about this event. I won't tire you with all the party details. It might have been a pleasant occasion if my heart weren't broken and my mind wasn't racing intensely trying to figure out how to expose everything. About an hour and a half after the big announcement, Margaret Williamson, the first assistant district attorney, arrived and mentioned that James wanted to meet with his team. James was an elected official, while Margaret was a senior staff member who effectively managed the office. Officials could come and go every 4 years, but Margaret remained a steady fixture. She was a formidable woman, yet widely respected in the legal community for her honesty and principles. Margaret was an older female lawyer who greatly influenced Emily's decision to accept the position. I truly admired her. Margaret had been married for more than 30 years to an electrician who had supported her through college and now owned a successful electrical supply business. The couple was deeply committed to each other. I always thought of them as a role model for Emily and me. "Apologies for taking your wife away from you." "Morgan," Margaret said, "James wants to talk about office organization as soon as he finishes campaigning." Shortly after both of them left, I stepped away from the small group of staff members remaining from the meeting and moved across the large pool, opposite the patio where the party was taking place. There was a wicker swing chair hung suspended by chains in a shaded spot where people could catch a glimpse of me if they paid close attention. But I did not want to stand out. This location served as the ideal refuge for gathering my thoughts. I had been seated for less than 5 minutes when a voice broke my solitude. "So this is where you have been hiding," it murmured. I glanced up as Barbara settled onto the wicker swing beside me. She positioned herself facing me without uttering a word. Her small black dress brushed her sun-kissed thighs, hugging her figure, hinting at what lay beneath, yet revealing nothing. It was both alluring and innocent, conveying much about my mood, which I observed almost analytically. "You look like a man burdened by the weight of the world," she remarked. I did not feel inclined to discuss matters with the daughter of my wife's lover, regardless of her appeal. "We have been very busy at the office. There are numerous inspections underway," I said to put an end to the topic. "Really?" Barbara asked with genuine interest. "I just completed my last accounting class in school. We spent several sessions discussing how forensic accounting applies to law enforcement. I found it quite fascinating, even amidst my sorrow." "Surprisingly," I responded skeptically. "Well, it is not exactly glamorous, but it is like detective work, sifting through heaps of information to identify the crucial facts and piece them together. Working together helped us obtain a clearer understanding. Moreover, since some individuals attempt to conceal this information, the situation becomes more complex. Most people perceive it differently," I admitted. Barbara started to share extensively what she had discovered during the course and why she found it so enjoyable. I must admit, I was impressed. I have encountered interns at the firm who were unable to articulate their thoughts so well on this subject. Concentrating on her words allowed me to overlook both her appearance and, more importantly, the anger simmering inside me. I found myself embracing the role of a mentor. It helped me momentarily divert my attention from the emotional unrest. "You really enjoyed the class," I commented. "It seems you understood the material very thoroughly." Barbara blushed at my compliment. For a brief moment, I saw a sincere young woman genuinely moved by the praise. "I was actually considering joining the FBI after finishing high school. My dad wants me to become a prosecutor or work at one of his friend's law firms, but I don't believe that is what I want to do." "You should pursue your own dreams, not your father's," I advised frankly. This was honest guidance not aimed at ruining the man's plans. "I have done some work with the FBI when audits uncovered criminal activity. They have sharp people there," I added. Before Barbara could reply, Emily appeared from the shadows. "So that is where you disappeared to. You didn't do anything inappropriate, did you?" she asked playfully. Barbara turned toward my wife and smiled brightly. "We were just talking," she said. "We were just talking about Jim's job in class, and I wanted to hear a professional's view." Emily said with pride, "Morgan is that expert." I glanced at one of his audit reports where an employee was stealing money by using his boss's login. Morgan noticed that some transfers happened while the employee was on a business trip, yet the login originated from the corporate office. Most people would have stopped there when they realized it was the boss's login, but Morgan kept investigating. "I could have secured a conviction against that employee on the very first day after graduating law school," he added. Morgan left the prosecutor's office believing there was no chance of success. Emily looked at me proudly as she shared this story, which made me feel deeply embarrassed. How could she feel proud of me and say she loved me while she was in a 6-month relationship with her awful boss? I must have looked confused because Emily asked, "What's wrong, honey?" I replied, "Nothing, just thinking about the situation." "Enough about that. It's time to celebrate," Emily declared, struggling to catch her breath as she continued, "Morgan, you will never guess the opportunity I got. Paul and Margaret want me to take over the administrative duties since I plan to go on maternity leave as soon as you finish your work. That way, nothing will be left to do when I leave, and I'll be reporting directly to Margaret." My heart sank at the thought of Emily being away from that terrible Paul. My hopes were crushed in an instant. "I will need to travel occasionally, Emily," I continued. "I will be delivering important documents to James during the campaign, so I will not be directly involved in his campaign efforts. But I will get a glimpse of some behind-the-scenes activities. It promises to be quite exciting." I could feel my heart breaking all over again. I knew I had heard Emily mention that she intends to end the affair so that we can have a child. Yet, I could easily picture her resuming the relationship, hoping for campaign donations. If she becomes pregnant, who can say the baby will be mine? The man is about my height and complexion, so without a DNA test, proving paternity would be very difficult. My anger began to rise, but I restrained myself. This was not the moment. Barbara started talking to Emily about her new role in the campaign. Soon they were deeply engaged in conversation, and I was completely ignored. Taking advantage of this, I pulled myself together. After tonight, I would begin strategizing. I needed to find a way to counter James's political influence, but to be honest, I had no clue how. Then, the answer arrived at my office 2 days later. Your appointment is at 4 o'clock, my receptionist announced through the open door. We are no longer called receptionists, she said. I glanced at my Outlook calendar and saw nothing scheduled. Before I could respond, she entered the room. Barbara Evans, she called out. Hi, Morgan, I replied as she crossed the threshold. Her long, dark red hair cascaded over her shoulders. She wore a light sundress that revealed her stunning legs and sandals with straps. The dress wrapped around her legs, almost reaching her knees, with her chest modestly covered. No cleavage was visible, but the fabric clung to her form in a suggestive way. Two delicate straps held up the dress, leaving her arms bare. I found myself speechless as I watched her step inside. I hope you don't mind, Barbara said, closing my office door behind her. I told Mary we had an appointment to discuss my career and how Emily works for my father. I stood politely from my chair. I'm glad to see you, I said as I was working on some reports. I motioned for her to sit in one of the chairs opposite my desk. Once she was seated, I took my seat and asked, What would you like to discuss? The smile on Barbara's face vanished suddenly. I think you already know, Jim. I saw it in your expression when you spoke to my despicable father. I'm so sorry he ruined such a good man. I was taken aback. This was not what I had anticipated. What do you mean? I said cautiously. Barbara frowned. Oh, the fact that the man known as my father is having an affair with your wife. I leaned back, stunned that she said it so plainly. Did you just find out? I asked. Barbara answered softly. Yes? I nodded. I'm sorry. When did you discover this? I asked. About 3 months ago, Barbara admitted. I don't know when it began, but I learned about it in February. One Friday, I came home early, and they were having one of their meetings at our house. I had just had a late lunch with a high school friend, so I stopped by to drop off my things, say hello, and leave. My father asked when I would be back, and I replied that it would be after dinner. It turned out that my friend was unwell and could not come over. I grabbed some food and headed home. When I arrived, I found my father and Emily together in our hot tub. I took photos of them and even made them run inside completely exposed. There was nearly 1 foot of snow covering the ground. You took pictures of your father in such a situation? I asked, shocked. I also wondered if I could get copies of those photos. That would be incredibly useful for the divorce case. As if she could read my mind, Barbara reached into her bag, brought out a large envelope, and placed it on my desk. Here are images from that day and a few others, she said, pausing and smiling. Dad installed a security system in the house. Everything is locked from the outside, and cameras are installed in several rooms. If you know the website, have a key fob, and the password, you can access the house from almost anywhere. There is also a thumb drive with videos on it. I was stunned by all this. Paul's daughter was handing me everything I might require to divorce and ruin her father. Why? I asked quietly. The sadness in Barbara's eyes quickly turned into anger as she said softly, I despise that man more than you ever could. I did not reply but waited. After a moment, she continued. Dad met Mom when she was at university. He was a young lawyer assigned to the sex crimes division in Philadelphia. Mom came from Ireland to study. Her family was well off but had perished during the London dairy bombing. She came here to escape from the past. Her voice softened, carrying a gentle tone she had likely picked up from her mother. Emily dated a man who was cruel enough to cause her serious injury, landing her in the emergency room. Then James paused and placed a small book on my desk. It was quite thick with an intricate green lace cover. I discovered her diary after she passed away, revealing her tendency to be submissive. She enjoyed being guided by a dominant partner, but this relationship crossed a dangerous line and led to hospitalization. James handled the case as a professional. They met. The man was imprisoned, and about a year later they tied the knot. James was always driven. He married an intelligent, stunning woman with an unusual accent. Emily found a protector in a strong man. When I appeared a few years later, James encouraged me to take up gymnastics. He believed my future Olympic achievements would boost his political ambitions. You know how most gymnasts' journeys conclude? I shook my head, confessing I never considered that. Barbara smiled and said, "They call it the 3 Bs: brains, bodies, and boys. I had the first. I was told to cheer and embody the all-American girl ideal. I enjoyed performing, but by age 16, I realized I was merely a pawn in my father's plans. Emily was aware almost from the start. James had affairs nearly right after marriage. Emily knew and pleaded with him to stop, but she felt powerless to act. She was trapped by her devout Catholic beliefs which forbade divorce. Barbara stopped briefly, and I gave her a moment to collect her thoughts before she went on. Sometimes she wondered if her weak reaction to the cancer treatment came from a deep, unconscious desire to give up, or if she was deliberately undermining the therapy. Regardless, I was right there with her in the hospital when she passed away. The official story claimed that my father was at court pursuing a murder charge, and that he convinced the doctor to alter the time of death. The truth was, he was actually with his assistant in her apartment celebrating. He treated my mother like a trophy, and the media adored the narrative about how they met. The brave prosecutor goes to save a battered woman, but the cruel truth is he was the one who abused her on more than one occasion. From what I have witnessed, why are you telling me this? I asked because Hogan, my father, is not a kind man. After my mother died, he kept his affairs hidden until I moved away for college. Then, he began holding meetings at our house, and they were not solely about his work. He also arranged gatherings for some charity organizations he was part of. I am absolutely certain he sleeps with 2 women involved in these groups. One of the less fortunate ladies genuinely believes it is true love and plans to leave her husband. Emily, I thought. I asked because I had heard rumors but wanted to be sure. Barbara shook her head. No, she just thinks it's all a game. They say power is the greatest aphrodisiac, and Emily seems to prove that. I overheard her speaking to Daddy about some senator they were meeting with and how. I was amazed by how thrilled she seemed when she returned to Doyletown. I flinched at such a harsh comment. I even recalled that day when I came home to a passionate woman, and it had been one of the most memorable nights of intimacy in my life. That cherished memory was now spoiled because I realized my wife probably wasn't thinking about me at that very moment. So what do you want? I asked. To her credit, Barbara looked me directly in the eye as she responded. I want you to end your marriage to that traitor. I want my father's career destroyed to the point where he would never be elected something like a dog catcher in a town full of cats. I thought about just sending my belongings to the press or even the opposition. But he has too many allies. I think together we can make them suffer. Will it be harder for you to finish school? She tossed her red hair again. No, my mother left me her fortune in a trust. I haven't touched it, but if I needed to, I could pay for the rest of my tuition and even my MBA with quite a lot left over. If your mother had so much money, why didn't she take you and leave? She could have gone to Ireland, wherever your father came from. Barbara scrunched her nose when I said that. She was raised Irish Catholic. She was taught that divorce was never an option no matter what. Mom held on to her faith until the very end. That is the only reason I believe her death was accidental rather than deliberate, since they also view suicide as the unforgivable sin. I must admit I could only see one thing clearly: the truth in Barbara's words. She had declared her intent to ruin her father's career, and the fact that I possessed this knowledge did not bode well for his ambitions. I found it hard to believe this was a setup. If Emily and Paul wished to erase me from existence, they could easily do so in court. Such vile tactics were reserved for the desperate. Suddenly, a plan began to take shape in my mind. I would require Barbara's cooperation for certain tasks, and it would prove how far she was willing to go to bring down her father. I agreed, but added that I did not want to destroy him by leaking those photographs or even mentioning his name in the divorce. Barbara stared at me in astonishment. Why not? She insisted, her face glowing with intensity, preparing to launch into an argument. I stopped her with a raised hand. I never said I would not destroy him. Instead, I wanted to avoid bad publicity involving a humiliated husband engulfed in a political scandal. My goal was to annihilate everything he had spent his life building, well, more so, his power and influence, and still manage a peaceful divorce no one would fret over. Barbara was stunned, but after a moment, a cunning smile spread across her lips. What do you want from me? She asked. I grinned in response. I will do what I do best, obtain his financial documents, both personal and campaign-related. They captured Capone through tax evasion. Having observed your father closely, I am certain I can discover. If you don't know what she requested, I smiled and said I could cook. Over the next 3 days, Barbara and I stayed occupied. She installed a keylogger on my father's personal laptop and home computer. Additionally, she created a complete backup of his hard drive. We adjusted their security setup so that the recordings would be uploaded to a cloud server. As far as I am aware, this server was physically located in another country. How generous to bug his own house. On my end, I did not intercept Emily's phone calls. Thanks to Barbara's proof, I did not need any further evidence. However, I did activate the GPS tracker intended for parents monitoring their children. It mainly used cell towers for positioning, unless I sent a command to enable GPS tracking. I simply did not want it to detect me at home while I was busy with work. I pretended to have a groin injury the day after Barbara first approached me. This gave me a reason to avoid having intimacy with my wife. I never imagined needing to invent a reason not to be intimate with my beloved wife. After learning about the number of Paul's partners, I did not want to take any additional risks beyond what I had unknowingly encountered. Also, I believe I could not have managed without releasing some of my anger. By the way, I scheduled a doctor's visit to test for sexually transmitted diseases. Initially, nothing was detected. However, some infections, such as HIV, may take several months before antibody tests come back positive. Emily went to the conference in Pittsburgh feeling irritated and upset, determined to confront Paul one last time. Unsurprisingly, she was very eager. James felt abandoned after the trip left her hanging. For several days, she had been very excited. Perhaps some men had given her farewell intimacy as a form of retaliation. My struggle was that somewhere deep inside, I still cared about her. Trusting her again was impossible, but that did not stop me from loving her. At the same time, I could not stand the idea of being intimate with her after everything I had discovered. It was Thursday morning, and Emily was waiting by the door with her packed suitcase for Paul and a junior attorney from their firm who were going to attend a conference together. I wondered if the young man realized he was just their alibi. "I will be home by Sunday afternoon," Emily said as she came behind me and placed my bag near the entrance. Sitting at the table with my back turned, I sipped my coffee. She wrapped her arms around me and leaned so close that her lips nearly touched my ear. "I hope you're feeling better so we can start trying for the baby," she whispered, in a voice so tender it could revive the lifeless, and her familiar scent brought memories of simpler times. It almost made me weep on the spot, but I held myself together. "I will ice it so it heals," I said, gently stroking her arm and pressing a kiss to her forehead. She sighed. "I wish I did not have to attend this. It would be far nicer to just stay home with you and enjoy a weekend of being naked." "You could always tell Evans that something more urgent came up," I replied, words escaping me unintentionally. From the look in her eyes, I could tell she detected something in my voice. "What is your problem, Paul?" she asked. In a surprised tone, "You first acted rude at the gathering, and now you sound like you despise the man." I forced myself to relax and shrugged. Frankly, I have witnessed too many arrogant types like Evans who believe they are invincible, untouchable, and the ultimate symbol of authority. They are merely prominent figures in insignificant environments, selling a fantasy of control that others blindly accept. Just like that mayor in South Carolina the previous year, a man who misappropriated the city's funds by engaging with 3 married women. Now he faces a decade in federal prison, with all his marriages ended and his reputation ruined. I feel the same way about Evans. If he reaches Washington, he will be exploiting naive interns within days. But eventually, everything will collapse and all his misdeeds will come spilling out for everyone to see. Kelly looked at me in disbelief. She had heard my diatribes against such predators before, but had never linked Evans to that group. Perhaps I should have stayed silent, yet it felt satisfying to speak up. And although the marriage was over, I believed it was right to warn Kelly. I still cared for her, even if I could no longer trust her. "That is an awful thing to say about Paul," Emily insisted. "He is a decent person who has contributed much to the community." "He is not like that." I heard the desperation in her voice, a denial tinged with timing that no one could predict. Suddenly, the honking of a car echoed from the driveway. Paul had arrived. Emily sighed with disappointment. She cast me a brief look filled with regret and almost fear. "I will be home in 4 days," Emily said in a soothing voice. Then we can discuss everything. But be prepared, my love. We need to have a baby. She embraced me warmly and kissed me with passion. I kissed her back with equal intensity. Have a great week, she breathed out. I love you. I love you too, I answered. She grabbed her bag and opened the front door. Goodbye, darling, she called without turning around. Goodbye, Emily, I replied, then shut the door. 30 minutes later, I boarded the train to the city. Barbara and I had a meeting at the FBI. It turned out I did not need to fabricate any proof. I would judge James Evans's embezzlement skills as fairly clever. Barbara and I gathered at her off-campus apartment to examine the files she had taken from his computer. The process was rather routine. Based on my calculations, he had approximately $2 million hidden in an overseas account. At least this was the amount he transferred there, but I could not confirm if the money was still present since those documents were missing. Most of this money came from various small contributors whose donations would not draw attention from the tax authorities. However, why were people from other states contributing to the district attorney's campaign? I managed to track some of them back to defendants who had their cases dropped or received unusually lenient plea deals. It was Barbara who uncovered the biggest revelation. Apparently, James was not the only one expecting a child. He had impregnated 2 more women. During this period, one of the women was born 3 years before James's wife passed away. The mother was employed by James at the time the 3rd child arrived 8 months after his wife's death to an 18-year-old female volunteer at the hospital where his wife received treatment. James transferred $2,000 a month from campaign funds to each woman as a form of poll research. Barbara nearly destroyed her own apartment in a fit of anger because red hair truly serves as a warning. By the time Emily and Paul left, we had already pieced everything together. Despite some lingering questions in Paul's notes, we lacked the resources to uncover the full truth. So I compiled all the findings and arranged a meeting with a senior FBI agent I had previously worked with in the Philadelphia office. Barbara came forward to tell him the story we had uncovered. She testified that after completing a forensic accounting course, she wanted to examine the actual records out of pure curiosity. She decided to investigate her father's documents and noticed several irregularities. She contacted me because my wife had worked for her father and knew of my expertise. Gary was an experienced professional who sensed there was more beneath the surface, but when we handed him a clear opportunity, he did not press further. A corrupt prosecutor in his own territory, one who had just launched a campaign for the U.S. Senate, this case seemed like an unexpected gift. We took a taxi to Barbara's apartment since she had late classes, and I made my way to the 30th Street station to catch the train back home. My mind was already preoccupied with thoughts of packing and leaving when Emily arrived. James assured me he would accelerate the process and secure a subpoena for Evans's records by Wednesday at the latest. It seemed unlikely that news of the investigation would leak beforehand. The scoundrel will soon see how fragile his authority truly is, once all his allies desert him. Emily called me during the train ride. She mentioned that she called early because they had plans for a grand dinner, and she would not return to her room until very late. I was certain she did not intend to stay in her room that evening. I made a few indistinct comments, saying it was all right. She noticed my distracted tone and asked what was troubling me. I confessed that I had a meeting with FBI agents about a case. I added that since I was on the train and the investigation was still active, I could not disclose any details. This was all entirely truthful. Sounds like you have been deeply affected, Emily said with concern. Yes, this case is going to be dreadful. It will likely hit the national headlines once the full story emerges. Really, I said with some interest. Can you at least give me a clue? I couldn't resist. Criminal activities, politicians, bribes, money laundering, infidelity involving children. A typical summer scandal. Someone I know? I winced. I have already revealed too much. If I say any more, the agency will shut me down. You are no fun at all, Emily complained with a pout. Don't worry, darling. Your secret is safe with me. We said our farewells and she left. As I stepped into the house, a sudden realization struck me. My marriage had ended. We had been together and married for 10 years. I never imagined I would become single again yet. Now that was the reality I had to face. For a long time, I simply sat on the couch waiting for the daylight to disappear. I remained still watching, feeling as if my entire life was fading beyond the horizon. Hours slipped by after the sun had set before I moved once more. It was a Saturday afternoon when I snapped out of my self-pity. I'm not denying I deserved some sorrow, yet deep down I knew I had to change my routine. Ironically, I was mowing the lawn again when a BMW convertible pulled into my driveway. I paused the mower and saw Barbara stepping out of the car. The first thing catching my eye were her long, pale legs extending from the driver's side. She wore sandals with thin laces wrapping around her calves, always reminding me of ancient Greek style. Standing there, I could observe her toned legs flexing, revealing the strength beneath her firm skin. True to the Greek inspiration, her pure white dress resembled a toga reaching mid-thigh, but adorned with a couple of inches of lace at the hem that offered subtle, teasing glimpses of her upper thigh. Her dress, made of light silky fabric, clung to her curves and was slightly see-through. Her firm breasts were held up by a bikini visible beneath the dress, and beyond that, she wore nothing more. Her arms showed only faint freckles scattered across the skin on the tops of them, and her shoulders. The dress slipped on, revealing just one shoulder while the other remained exposed. Her long red hair cascaded down in gentle waves over those very shoulders. Yet it was her gray-green eyes and that smile which truly grabbed my attention as she approached. I switched off the engine and gave her a salute. "Well, you look better than I imagined," Emily said. "I half expected I would have to either pull you out of a bottle or drag you away from a ledge." I chuckled, admitting to myself I had entertained both ideas the night before. "It had to be done," I responded. "Besides, not seeing a lawyer was distracting me." She asked if I completed it. I shrugged, explaining I had handled it on Tuesday prior to anyone leaving. The paperwork would be ready by Monday. I had arranged to perform an audit for a client in Austin and depart on Tuesday. Usually, travels like these last 3 days before I continue remotely until the report concludes. This time I would stay for the entire 3 weeks. Shrugging again, I admitted, "I suppose that's the coward's way, but I prefer not to be here when this chaos ends." The expression on Emily's face revealed understanding. She realized this would also put her under scrutiny as the daughter of that bastard. "It's good to see you thinking ahead," remarked the redhead, a smile appearing once more. "Now I know how to plan as well. Here's what I intend to do. I will help you wrap up your work here. Then you will come to my place where we will enjoy ourselves, and you. You can stare at me all you want. I have a swimsuit you will absolutely adore." The final words were uttered in a tone powerful enough to awaken even the dead. I attempted to encourage Barbara. "I am still married." I argued and felt unprepared for anything else for quite some time. "You need to release some tension before you burst," the alluring red-headed lady insisted. "Moreover, you know the old adage, what is good for the goose is equally good for the gander." Her look was mischievous, crafty, and teasing all at once. I could not help but chuckle by one of those strange coincidences. Proving truth is stranger than fiction. We unexpectedly met Olivia, of all people, after completing my yard work. I freshened up and we set out for a late lunch at a lovely restaurant. I was not exactly seeking a revenge fling, but it felt good to leave the house and enjoy a date with a woman as lovely as Barbara, who bore a striking resemblance to her which would not be difficult at all. As I arrived at the restaurant, I noticed a vehicle parked slightly nearer. It belonged to Leah. I always thought it was almost a crime to place OBX and Jersey Shore bumper stickers on a Mustang GT. I almost told Barbara to turn around and look for somewhere else, but I did not. Instead, I acted in a way completely uncharacteristic of myself. It all happened on impulse. After all my careful preparation, something inside me burst when I saw Olivia's car in that parking lot. I casually draped my arm around the red-headed beauty and guided her inside. Without hesitation, I tipped the host so we could be seated at a specific table. It was partly shaded but fully visible. When we came back from the restroom, I positioned Barbara facing outward and sat beside her. She smiled as I took her hand. "What brought this on?" she asked with a gentle smile. "Not that I am complaining," I chuckled. "Do you remember when I told you about discovering that my wife was unfaithful? Her friend Olivia? Well, her car is parked just down the street." Barbara burst into a rich laugh. "So I am going to be the other woman? Oh, I can live with that," she said as she leaned in and pressed a soft, affectionate kiss on my lips. It was not a deep, passionate kiss, but one full of promise and intrigue. A lover's kiss. The food arrived, and I truly enjoyed myself. All worries disappeared as I savored Barbara's company. Her witty sense of humor was overwhelming. Never had I heard such a dirty counting sound before. Suddenly, I noticed Olivia passing by and pointed her out to Barbara. "That feels good," she giggled. "I have been looking forward to this." With those words, she leaned in for a kiss. I slid my hand under the table along her leg. The skin was unbelievably smooth, hiding strong, flexible muscles beneath. The sensation sparked a fire within me. I could feel warmth through her panties. My hand moved instinctively forward to explore, caught completely in the moment. The surprise hit me hard the moment I heard Olivia shouting at me. "Morgan, what on earth are you doing?" she yelled. "Who is this person you are flirting with while your wife is away?" "I thought more highly of you," she added, her voice filled with disbelief. The entire restaurant seemed to turn toward us as I released Barbara's hand and faced my former friend. "What is your issue, Liv?" I asked. "It is just some casual fun before Emily and I settle down and start a family. And you will be able to handle it," I said confidently. People were trying to eat around us while Olivia stared at me as if I had just insulted her with something foul. "Come on, Liv. Emily is probably doing the same thing. She has likely been involved with her boss for a long time now, so I thought it only fair that I get involved with the boss's grown daughter." I believe Olivia almost fainted there. I felt Barbara start to chuckle and gently pressed her to silence her. Of course, I lost track of where my hand was, and her soft laugh shifted into a moan of delight. "You know about it," Olivia stammered. "I'm aware that I am supposed to be the loyal husband who remains blind while my wife runs around being aided by someone I once trusted," I said with bitterness in my voice. Olivia frowned at the harshness beneath my words. I realized Emily wanted one last taste of freedom before having a baby, like a final fling before the wedding. "If that was acceptable for her, what is your problem with me?" I replied. I had not known that Emily had any other affairs before Paul's, but as the saying goes, once a cheater, always a cheater, I thought to myself, quietly noting my doubts. I wondered if Liv would lose her composure to confirm that she was aware of everything. She sighed, admitting she did not know for sure but thanked me for the confirmation. Olivia suddenly turned pale and I told her to go away. She quickly vanished behind the table. Minutes later, we heard a movement. It was Olivia leaving the restaurant. "Well, it was enjoyable while it lasted," Barbara remarked with a soft laugh. I truly wish she had stayed longer. Her smile made me blush. "She is probably talking on the phone with your wife right now," she added. I agreed it was likely and guessed I had about 5 minutes before my phone would ring. If Olivia left immediately, it would take about 5 hours to get home from Pittsburgh, which would leave us time for dessert and allow me to pack. It was unfortunate I wouldn't get to see her in a bikini, as she had promised. Barbara chuckled once more. "Well, I suppose we can do this some other time." She reached up, tugging my shirt to pull me closer. "My semester is ending in about a week and a half," she whispered near my ear. I barely heard her next words before her tongue brushed against my ear. Epilogue. That moment was indeed the beginning of the storm. Emily started calling me 10 minutes after Olivia left the restaurant. I listened to some of her messages. She was furious about being cheated on. It almost made me laugh. After an hour of calls and texts, I decided to block her number. I knew she would only get worse. In the end, I just decided to call from a different phone. However, she was driving back from Pittsburgh, so borrowing someone's phone on the turnpike was not an option. I headed home and gathered all my personal belongings, not only those needed for the trip to Austin. I had around 4 hours before I was set to leave. After meeting with Olivia, I drove away from my house, likely for the last time. I checked into a hotel near the Philadelphia airport, stored most of my things in a storage unit, and waited until I found a place to live. Meanwhile, I spoke to Barbara on the phone several times. She had gone to a friend's place because her father was now sending furious messages to her phone. I changed my flight to Austin to Monday morning and headed out. Emily managed to contact me several times from different numbers that day. Her calls were full of tears and anger, questioning how I could hurt her and destroy her career, among other things. Olivia's initial emotional outburst had caught a lot of attention. Then, someone shared a fairly accurate version of events on a blog, including a comment from Barbara and me about Emily being involved with Paul. It also mentioned that they had spent the weekend together in Pittsburgh. This created a significant stir within local political circles and at the courthouse throughout the week. I mostly avoided news coming out of Philadelphia. It was not until Friday that I received an email updating me on what was happening in Doylestown. Surprisingly, the message came from Margaret, a senior manager in the district attorney's office. At the office, the elderly lawyer was expressing apologies for everything that had occurred. She was aware that Paul had been involved with 2 women outside the office, but was completely unaware of Emily's participation. She also appreciated the fact that I had fought back by using legal measures against the lawyer. According to Margaret, that week in James Buck's office was very eventful. On Monday morning, Paul was present in the office, struggling to manage the consequences and vehemently denying any improper actions. "It is just my daughter acting out under the influence of an unfaithful spouse," was how he tried to explain the situation. On Tuesday, Emily received divorce papers on the basis of infidelity. Along with the documents, there were photographs, DVDs, and a letter from me. As Emily screamed in shock while reading my letter, Margaret and two others rushed into the room. Emily sank into her chair, stunned, and Margaret noticed photographs scattered across the desk. My letter told Emily that I was not having an affair, but wanted her to understand how deeply I felt about her betrayal. I told her that I could not remain married to someone I no longer trusted, especially after discovering her previous infidelity. There was not much activity at the district attorney's office on Tuesday. The following day, Margaret was in Paul's office for a meeting when suddenly 4 men in suits entered. Paul shouted at them for disturbing an important meeting, but one of the men informed him that he had been arrested. He was utterly stunned as they proceeded. They handcuffed him and escorted him out of the office, she mentioned. They walked him right through the main entrance of the courthouse and allowed reporters inside, who had somehow been tipped off. I owe Gary a few beers for that. At the end of the letter, Margaret expressed regret for permitting such conduct in her office. She also offered to assist me if I needed anything, acknowledging that I did not deserve that treatment. I believe part of her message was damage control, but mostly Margaret was the ethical and professional person I always thought she was. Now all my hopes for a peaceful divorce had been ruined because of my own foolish, reckless behavior with Olivia at that restaurant. News outlets in Philadelphia quickly caught wind of Paul's arrest and the accusations against him. As I explained to Emily, the story had all the elements of a summer romance: passion, betrayal, revenge, and excessive drama. The media devoured it, and it was rapidly broadcast by eager 24-hour news channels. I managed to avoid the worst of it by being out of town, making myself unreachable as I had booked a second hotel room 10 miles away from the one listed on my work itinerary. I did check in there, however, and reporters camped outside trying to catch me. I saw on television that they had set up in front of my home. Emily stayed inside, and the cameras only managed to film my family members coming and going. Barbara had it toughest, as she was the daughter who reported her own father. James had to attend classes and pass exams, so during the initial few days, it was quite simple for the media to locate her. Subsequently, the school expelled the journalists from campus because their presence was disrupting the students. This was also aided by the fact that 2 women who had children with Paul sought their own brief moments of attention. After the last issue was wrapped up, Barbara quietly left the campus and headed towards the airport. The media felt let down but not overly shocked when she failed to appear at the graduation event. As time passed, the story slipped into a less prominent news category and remained there. It gained momentum once Paul's trial started, yet he admitted guilt to multiple charges, which led to a lengthy incarceration of 20 years with the federal authorities. Luckily, due to his confession, Barbara and I were spared from testifying. Gradually, everything vanished from the public eye, taking with it Barbara, Emily, and me. Strangely enough, despite all the media attention, my divorce proceeded without complications and concluded swiftly. Emily signed the documents just 4 days after receiving them. I later got a letter expressing regret for what she had done to me and to us. After returning from Pittsburgh, she declared in anger that she would never forgive me for being unfaithful. However, upon discovering that she was actually the only one who had betrayed the relationship, she recognized her hypocrisy. Accepting my proposal for an equal division, she requested that once things settled down, I agree to meet her so she could apologize face to face. She finished by stating that she would always care for me and wish me well. Later on, I found out from her mother that she had left her job and moved to the Midwest to live with her aunt. Investigating James proved to be a major boost for my career in the media. The FBI credited me fully for examining James's files, since I was evading the same media attention myself. I was even more meticulous in Austin, uncovering not only the embezzler they were pursuing, but also a second one no one suspected at that time. My firm rewarded me with a promotion and placed me in charge of the white-collar crime division. Some joker even nicknamed the group Morgan's Heroes. The best part was they gave me an assistant, a recent college graduate eager to gain experience in forensic accounting. I had never enjoyed working late nights as much as then. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.